Hi, everybody, welcome. This is Aurora. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, June 5th, 2024. And the official name of this lesson, this is Level 1, Lesson 10, and this is officially called the Flower of Life, the Merkabah, or the Star Tetrahedron, and the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. But before I launch into that, I am going to give you an extracurricular exposition about time at the request of a lovely long-term listener and participant. That's Robert. And he wanted me to speak more about time. And I think that that is very relevant to what we were experiencing. Some of you might have seen that treaty that I wrote for the liberation of Earth and the full surrender of evil. And I drank yerba mate and stayed up quite late last night waiting for this meeting that was on a different time zone than mine. And then myself and the other person that was supposed to be there with me, that we were supposed to be invited to this meeting, we were summarily disinvited at the last moment. But you have to comprehend that that does not mean that things don't happen. That's kind of like you get invited to whatever, a contest or something like that, that they forfeited the opportunity to negotiate. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. So all the things happened that were supposed to happen, and I gained greater levels of augmentation and empowerment as a result. But I will not go into greater levels of detail at this moment about what happened, only to report to you that it is very, very positive. But now I would like to speak to you about time. So this is extemporaneous and extracurricular, but very, very relevant to everything that we are talking and learning about. And apologies, like you can see me in my studio lighting here, but I recognize the background is quite dark and you can't really see my paintings or anything like that effectively, but you'll be able to see me. Time is an alive being, okay? Time is not something that is dead and stupid. Just as I have emphasized over and over in this class, that like the sun is not a giant, stupid ball of hot gases in the sky, as materialist science might have you believe. Or even something like photons are merely not high energy particles, or light is not merely a phenomenon, an optical phenomenon, or something that, you know, is an irradiation or an excitation of molecular structure. These are all sentient aspects and structures of the overall cosmic infrastructure. Light is sentient and it is awareness. It is also synonymous with intelligence and data, and it also truthfulness. That is why I'm enraged and inflamed by even the concept of false light. That's like big smallness. It's an oxymoron. It does not make sense, because the very definition of what light is that it is informative. In the same exact way that when you turn on the light switch and you see with optical light, it informs you about structures that you can see in the room around you. And in the absence of light, you do not have that information. But false light is illusory, distortive. It is stimulative, but it is not the same as light or information. So we should just begin calling it non-information stimulation, which is nonsense and garbage. Just start calling it garbage, all right? But in much the same way, time is an alive feature of the cosmic infrastructure, and it is very much an alive animal. And I think I have spoken about that in class, but I don't have a standalone lesson module that is only about time. It is woven throughout. So let me take this as an opportunity to emphasize some things from earlier in the semester, and perhaps articulate for the first time some things which you might have intuited. Time is alive. When I talk about the fabric of space-time, which is something that human materialist science recognizes, that fabric is a living time field. It is not something that is dead or stupid, and it is completely sentient and self-aware. And that means that it also has its own rights, just as you have human rights, or as a tree has rights, or my dog has rights. That time has rights itself. It is not an item to be exploited. It is not a something to be used. It is not merely an energy. And I know that humans have many, many limitations, as I like make excuses for some of the ways that time has been treated. time, humans have limitations on how time is experienced. Time is largely experienced as a linear phenomenon and is largely looked at as something to be used, utilized. It's hardly even comprehended, much less can it be personified effectively. Just adjusting my fan because I was telling everyone, like, it's hot. We're finally getting some sunshine. We're finally getting to the warmer weather. So I have to just have like the fan and the AC going because I have all of this lights and computer stuff in front of me here. But time is alive, time is self-aware, and time is literally inseparable from your own existence. All right. Now, I am Aurora, and I come from a level of existence that is outside of space-time. Aurora, time is inseparable from our existence. But you just said you come from a place outside of space-time. That is correct, because I am viewing all time as as a holistic whole, as an entirety, in much the same way that you can look at this crystalline structure, which is a small window ornament that I have, and you can see the entire thing at once. And you can see it has many, many facets, and you can see everything that's going on about this object at once. Time is the same way, that right now you are embedded within the object and you are flowing through the object and the object flows through you. However, there's also another perspective that may be achieved that is outside of the object, and that is the higher dimensional perspective, wherein you can perceive the whole entire object at once. But from that perspective, one is not as empowered to influence the object as one is within the object. Does that make sense to you? It's like being able to say, you're outside of the recipe, looking at the end result of everything that has happened in the recipe, but you're not making and cooking the recipe as it is actually happening. And in levels of submersion in time, you gain levels of empowerment. You can do stuff. You're affecting the recipe as it is being made. However, you lose a lot of your perspective when you are in a body that is shaped like your present body form, because you need to get to your higher dimensional levels of augmentation where you have the best of both worlds, where you are submerged in time and also able to achieve the totality perspective of time at the same time, concurrently, to be able to then navigate effectively. So that's the goal, the very, very wonderful privilege of being in time and being alive and seeing everything and knowing everything and being able to actually do something about it. That's the goal. All right. And that's actually something that has been not achievable to you for a long time due to very many genetic disruptions and time, consciousness, and larger infrastructure disruptions, which are being resolved. Good. Okay, so now back to lessons earlier in the semester. Well, we'll get to questions. I like your questions. Thank you very much. I hold this up all the time. I know it has a little boo-boo we have to fix over here. But this is the shape of your chakras, the shape of Earth's magnetosphere, the shape of the heliosphere, and it is the shape of time. Although this is a static object that I have created out of, tiny pieces of filament, you have to comprehend that there are flows of energy that flow around here, and that it is comprised 100% of time swirling amidst itself. So this is your time body. This is your light body. This is also a feature of the larger time field, as you in your body have tiny little particles that swim around like your red blood cells, and their circulation is absolutely essential for the health and vitality and maintenance of yourself as the overarching or meta being that is containing them. So too do the currents of your life and the events of your life, down to the minutiae of everything that you do and everything that you experience, very, very, very directly relate to the health, functioning, vitality, and continuance, coherence of the larger time field. So you becoming a time expert and becoming an empowered navigator, navigatrix of time is absolutely essential to the health, vitality, and maintenance of the larger time field. You're supposed to be able to see and know where you're going. You're supposed to be able to swim and navigate with some amount of self-volition, not merely bouncing from event to event and tumbling end over end, not knowing what's going on, and then crashing haplessly into the membrane of death. That is not what is supposed to happen. So in case you cannot tell, I am not a determinist at all. Determinism is a sense of no free will, and that you are meant to simply, like I said, be a Roomba robot bouncing around, through various different scenarios and bouncing into events and sometimes dying, all without really great levels of volition or personal control. And I don't agree to that. I agree very much to the free will model and proposal of the reality structure that you are within. And that free will is also essential to the sense of taking responsibility. And responsibility is essential to the concept of having a soul. And as I describe the word soul, I often tell you that it is not merely like how people might consider, I joke, Casper the ghost, when you die at the end of your life and then a white sheet comes off of you and like, that's your soul, and it flies around somewhere like Casper the ghost, which I think, again, might be rather outdated as a pop cultural reference, but sometimes I'm just very outdated. No, your soul is the story of you and the story of everything that you've ever been through, the narrative provenance of your consciousness across many, many incarnations, all of which are actually parallel, not in serial, not in a linear form, and multiple even attempts at incarnation within one incarnation, which is the real comprehension of the profundity of this shape that I've shared with you many times, which we sometimes in this class jokingly use a shorthand, which is known as Groundhog's Day, where you recognize in the lower quadrant of this shape, there is a cone-shaped vortex, and that vortex represents a field of possibilities, and you are attempting to align with the central core timeline, which is where my pen is located, but that there are parallel timelines, peripheral to the edges, and that those are not the real you, and that you're really not meant to explore those. Those exist as unintentional, again, peripheries, or the edges that are the wake of your consciousness as you are moving through time. Time is a fluid medium. Pardon me while I drink some of my vitamin C water over here. It's very fine vintage. Thank you. You have an impulse that is moving through a fluid medium. So how is this shape created? It is created through the impulse of your consciousness, of awareness, moving through a fluid medium. And that impulse is correct in the sense of music, like I talked about harmonics last week, or math being correct, that there's an equation of you, which is or are this series of events, just as like 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5, et cetera, equals a number. In order for blah, 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 plus blah to equal infinity in you, these have to be exactly the right series of events. And this, again, goes down to the minutiae of not only what did you eat for breakfast, but how many bites did you eat for breakfast? You're like eating your eggs. It's like that, but not that. Leave that part over. That's not part of the equation of me. Down to that level of exactitude, and even greater on an interior, internal level. You're a miracle within a miracle. Deal with it. What is happening on your cell membranes? Your cell membranes are processing an enormous amount of information in every moment. And that is also part of this enormously complex equation that is you. So this relates very, very much to the embodiment of the dance known as the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, which is not merely a dance with your arms and legs. When I dance, you guys see me moving my arms and legs. That's visible to your optical level of perception. I am also moving my DNA in very, very fast patterns. And I'm also utilizing the cell-to-cell communication network in my body and every aspect of my metabolism. On my cell membranes, there's oxygen and carbon dioxide and glucose and hormones and insulin and neurotransmitters and all sorts of things that are happening. And they happen in complex patterns. Complex, non-random patterns, that's music. Turn on my piano if I'm good inside of it. Oh, sorry, I don't have my settings set up for music today. Do you know why? Because I have my air conditioner on, and I don't want you to hear my AC, so we'll just leave things. But music, music. You're supposed to be making this amazing music with your body. Music is absolutely a time-based and time-reliant form of artistry. So when you look at a painting, you look at it, you see it all at once. Boom. But when you listen to music, it has a time signature. It's moving at a certain rate. You got to get the tubas and the drums and the flutes and everybody to move at the right rate in order for it to sound good. In fact, that is a very, very large part of the artistry of what it is to be a performer, to be a composer, and even to listen to and enjoy music and to be a dancer, that you have to integrate many, many different variables within time. That is the definition of what is music. So that is tying us all into the curriculum from this class from last week. So the big emphasis in terms of what time is that it is a phenomenon of consciousness. It is interdependent with consciousness. It is inseparable from consciousness. And big emphasis here, your individual chakra system of all of these vortices that are all throughout your body. So I have all these different paintings that are allegorical. You need to comprehend that these vortices aren't just like, I have one here and I have one here. Like, no, you actually have an innumerable number of them, because every single cell of your body has a set of chakras, and you have trillions of cells in your body. So let's say you have 7 chakras times whatever, 3 trillion cells, 21 trillion chakras in your body. All right. So I make these paintings and I show 7 major chakras. You have 21 trillion of them. That's a lot. I have not yet painted anything at that scale, but I would if I had many, many years to do so and no other responsibilities. I'd be like, go away. Don't call me on the phone. I'm painting 21 trillion chakras. But I could do it. Just give me enough time and I could do it. All right. Every single one of your chakras is a tiny time vortex. And this is not your only life. You are living concurrent lives. So part of the imprisonment or limitation of your consciousness up until this point has been not being able to comprehend and perceive the non-linear nature of time, wherein you are yourself here in this moment, and you are also concurrently submerged in other areas of the time field, experiencing what you would call other incarnations, but they are parallel incarnations. And that life and the events and the structures that are there, your challenges and your triumphs there, directly relate to what you're going through right here and now. So, for example, we all in this room know each other and are having conversations like this in other similar times and places. Like we might be in a Neolithic time, sitting around a campfire, and I might be talking to you in that circumstance and maybe using a stick and drawing things in the sand and giving you concepts about what the world is shaped like. And here we're like in a technological world and we're on a Zoom and we're all on various different places, but you understand we're doing similar things in parallel times. And everything that you're doing in your life and the triumphs that you overcome, like if you have an injury, you know, in one world, it might be a car accident. In another world, it might be someone, whatever, on the battlefield took an axe to your leg or whatever it was, and you had to try to survive that. Similar challenges that you're overcoming all at the same time. And then this is also very big. when you ascend, ascension is that moment of clicking into position where you're out of position and then all of a sudden click, you're in position, you're focused again on that eternal timeline. You do that in all of your lives at once. We all do that in all of our lives at once. So the ascension moment for you, it's not like, I ascended, you guys all didn't ascend. See you suckers. Like, I'm out of here, leaving you all behind in the dust. That is not actually what happens. Each person has their ascension moment, and all of these ascension moments are concurrent, along with the ascension moments of every single other organism that ascends. And that is planetary ascension. And that is what we are going through and what we are experiencing right now. So time also advocates for itself. Time as a, so your body also, when I define that, is your energy field, your time body. Your time body is you. You're an individual. But you as an individual are a red blood cell within a much, much larger being that is named time. And time has preferences. Just like inside of me, I have individual red blood cells that are like, I like oxygen. I want to bond with oxygen. I'm going to do stuff with oxygen. Then it's like, now I like carbon dioxide. I'm going to carry on carbon dioxide. Like, it's got its own agenda of every minute of what it's doing, right? And I'm like this, and I'm like, I want to drive to the store and buy coconut milk. So my red blood cells have their agenda of what they're doing in my body, while I have my agenda of what I'm doing in my body. And then inside of my life, I am also transporting energy for a much, much larger organism called time, which has its own agenda. And as I'm driving to the store, transporting my coconut milk, that larger meta organism named time is also having its experience. And just as I have my preferences of what I like and what I don't like, and what songs I like on the radio, what I prefer to have happen to me, and my red blood cells have their own preferences about what they would like to have happen to them in their lives, so too does time. The alive time field have preferences for what it does and does not wish to have happen, either to it or with it. So this is really, really important, because some of the things that I talk to you and teach about in this class are things like the invasion from Mars, the very, very cracked time machine that was created on planet Mars by technologists that directly affected and afflicted this planet in what I always call ancient or concurrent Atlantis, a time when humanity had a pristine genetic code and when all here were immortal. Nobody ever died. That doesn't mean that the peripherals didn't exist. The time field and the peripherals existed, but we all existed in such a perfect state of balance and alignment that we did not go on to those time pathways. But there was a destabilization that came to this world because of the crap time machine that some other guys built. And that harmed our world. And also that harmed and destabilized the overall body structure of time. So within your body, of course, if one or two red blood cells go horribly awry, you will not die. And you can also lose whatever, a certain number of red blood cells, and you will not die. But you know that there's a critical mass, that if you have enough of them that go wrong, or if you lose enough of them, that then that threatens the existence of the entirety. And we have gotten to that level of imperilment with time itself, that we've been in time wars. This is what is known as the Orion Wars. This is very complex. You don't have to tie yourself in knots to try to comprehend this, because I don't want you to have like a mental difficulty and jump out a window, because it's just very complex for you to be able to know about all of these things. But just know that the fabric of space-time can take a certain amount of stress, just like my dress. I can pull on this fabric a certain amount, and it's fine. But if I pull on it too much, it definitely tears apart. And that there have been conflicting events and conflicting assertions in terms of reality structures that within the time field itself that have gotten to the point of stress testing the fabric of reality to the point of almost having it tear apart. And this is what you're living through right now, but you're living through it not just right here now, you're also living through it in various different other embodiment structures and constructs. So really, October 13th of 2023 was a huge stress test of the fabric of reality. And a stress test of the fabric of reality comes down to if you have assertion of narrative A and then narrative B. And narrative A is like the real world. You'd call it the organic timeline, the way that things really are. And then narrative B is a, distorted, crunchy, squished up, not real reality. But that these two things are in conflict with one another. Like, it's not just like on one I drink coffee and on one I drink tea. It's like on one, like the world exists, birds fly in the sky, and trees exist, and people drink water. And on the other one, like something totally different happens. Reality is not supportable on timeline B. And timeline B has been artificially proposed and created, this distorted timeline, as narrative structures, largely through technology. All right, largely through not only the crap time machine on Mars, but also galactic scale AI, but also human technology on Earth right now, but also, where's my bad news over here? This stuff within people's bodies. All right. And timeline A and timeline B in October of 2023 fought a lot. And this is the fabric of reality. It's tearing apart, it's tearing apart, it's tearing apart, because the answer is you can't have both of these things saying, I'm the true world. No, I'm the true world. No, I'm the true world. No, I'm the true world. Like, there actually is a real answer. You can't say 1 + 1 = 3. You can't say 1 + 1 = 5. You actually can say 1 + 1 = 2. And that's real reality. And that is timeline A. And all of these other timelines are not only non-viable, they're fabrications, they're unhealthy fabrications. You can't just make up arbitrary stuff. You guys, from comprehending from the class harmonics last week, these are non-arbitrary patterns. These are very, very specific patterns that uphold life. And if you don't conform to those specific patterns of music, then you don't get to be alive. And so that's the whole point. You can't just have random biological organisms. Like, why do we have 2 eyes? Why do we have 2 ears? Why do we have, hair that grows out of the top of our heads? Why do we have eyelashes? Like, the answer is because all of these are supportive of life. And we don't have 12 eyes or whatever, 15 earlobes or any of these weird, bizarre grotesqueries, because those structures are not supportive of life, okay? But the AI and technology, and that includes DNA distortions and manipulations and gene splicing and cloning. Don't get me started on cloning. Those are aberrations because they are arbitrary and non-life supportive. And let's say you're like, well, I'll just like, my life is over, but I'm going to clone myself. This is my silly voice. Clone myself, and then I'll be able to keep on going. It'll be just as good as the original. No, it's not. Of course it's not. It's not replaceable. It's not a genuine extension of life. That is not genuine eternal life. So that goes for cloning, clone banks, cloned organs. You guys, I'm sure you've seen lots of science fiction movies. Some of them are quite poignant. There's one called Never Let Me Go. It's very sad. It's about humans that make a bunch of clones, spoiler alert, as their own organ banks. These clones are walking around not knowing that that's their purpose in life. One day they're going to get harvested. And their organs are going to go be in somebody else's body. None of that is okay. None of that is okay. No, it's really not the way that energy and matter are supposed to be used according to these perfect divine harmonic patterns. It's very, very dark stuff, actually. When you start to look at that, what you're looking at is ways of, or are ways of torturing time. Time can be tortured. Time can feel pain. Time is alive. Time is a meta overarching consciousness. Time is an alive animal. It can be imperiled if you distort it or attack it enough. And yes, it can feel pain. All right. And all of this does relate to that treaty that I was just sharing with you before. But again, I will not share fully yet about what this is really all about. But please know that in those recognitions of time, time has rights as an alive being. It has preferences. It can assert. When I talk about the colors of the rainbow and what these different things mean, the red chakra is the very, very primary chakra of existence. It's your root chakra. It is physicality. It is representative of existence. Again, I use that word. And when I talk about this, the translation for what the red chakra is, it says, I am. I'm allowed to exist. It's like the first foundation of anything that you are, the assertion, I'm allowed to exist. And time exists. It has an I am presence. I'm allowed to exist. And then, of course, with all of these layers of time, which I talked about last week, when you look at the chakras that I draw, that I wanted you to envision that they are like parallel lines meet at infinity in 1 point perspective, going off into the distance, and that all these different successive layers are successively distant from the physical realm in time and moving at a faster rate until you get to infinity. I like that you got your furry overlord there. Very nice. Time it can be moving at different layers and different speeds, and the rates at which it's moving must be harmonically integrated in order to be able to sustain consciousness and sustain the event structures. And there's right ways and wrong ways of doing things. And that time is allowed to express preferences and assert itself and to say, I am and I exist, and to preserve its existence. So in my sharing about timeline A versus timeline B, time field itself is like, I vote for timeline A. That's where all the equations are correct. That's where these are non-arbitrary equations. So technology has been used to distort time many, many, many times. You've been in time loops. You've had things, I call it papered over. That happened very visibly to me in July, early July of 2020. There was, I call it papering over, where like if you have the events of the time field, like a wall, that you can see all of these events structured upon there. And then this naughtiness that has been distorting time is like, I don't like these events. Let's wallpaper over some of it. And it kind of puts up a plaster, you know what I mean? A layer, and then a false assertion of narratives upon that layer of time. And it did that. And it's just very similar to the movie Dark City. I use these pop culture references just to be able to give you an allegory. They're not exact, but in that movie, there are like very unhealthy time manipulators that are not Time Lords at all. They are not Doctor Who. And they are manipulating the inhabitants of their time world. They just like, when people go to sleep at night, they just rearrange everything. You wake up in the morning, it's like, oh, no, everything is different. You get it? They did that very, very obviously to me in early July of 2020. And they have done it many times. And that's part of also the disempowerment and not victimization, but harm that has come to humanity in your disempowered state and in your incompleteness and not being able to see and know and advocate for yourself enough. And then like kind of shrug, like, what are you going to do? Wake up in the morning. Wow, everything is different than I thought it was. That's how it is. Okay, I'll just go with it. That's what most people just do, because otherwise you would go insane. You get it? That if you were like, oh, wait a minute, I specifically remember this in the movie, only one character that shows in one specifically remembers when he wakes up, he's like, no, everything was different. This was already arranged at night. And then somebody came along and shook up the Etch-a-Sketch, changed things all around. If you guys don't get my pop culture references, that's okay. But I think a lot of you do. But I recognize I have an international audience at this point, and not everybody is an English speaker, so you might even not know what the Etch-a-Sketch is. But erased, and then redrew time according to arbitrary patterns. And you might wonder, like, how is that even possible? And it has to do with genetic overlays. And those genetic overlays, of course, this is dark magic. And magic is indistinguishable. It's high technology, basically. Artistry Clarke said, any high technology that you can't comprehend is pretty much indistinguishable from magic. That's what we're talking about. A very, very dark form, dark use and application of high technology that has been used for a very long time, predating the telecommunications network, millimeter wave, and this stuff. But you have to also comprehend that this stuff, this word here on the bottom, as it grows a false crystalline network inside of the human and squirrel biological structure, because it's in squirrels in the park and dogs, it creates a straitjacket around DNA. So DNA is supposed to be able to be, DNA is directly connected to time. And the dance of your DNA is what propels you through time. And this is why I tell you that your DNA is a bridge of light. So yes, it is a molecular structure that can be perceived by humans with their optical vision or with a microscope. And it also contains information. The information it contains is not just in the sequence of its protein structures, but also in its dance, in its movement. Got it? This is just like saying the information that's contained within you is not just contained within like the shape of your body. Like you have a larynx that makes words, that brings forth information, like your movement of your mouth, the movement of your voice. This is how you speak. Your DNA speaks. And it speaks with a language of movement. And if you've only ever seen it dead or chopped up into pieces, then you don't even really know what it's talking about. And that's human materialist science at this point. And DNA contains information that is transmitted through its movement. The false crystals put a straitjacket around DNA and make it so it can't move effectively, can't speak those truths. And then what it does is it artificially moves DNA, kind of like girders, holding up a building or whatever, or whatever, an exoskeleton, kind of moving DNA around in very artificial patterns. That is how these false overlays are created. And it's an affront to DNA. It's an affront to the time field. It's an insult to the natural movement of time. It's an insult to the natural life and supportive patterns of time. And it is a total crime. It's a huge crime. It's a crime against nature. It's a crime against DNA. And there's no way to separate DNA from the totality of all existence. Like DNA is connected to everything everywhere because it is a time antenna that both sends and receives. So there's no way to be just like, we're just experimenting with DNA in this little box over here. Don't worry, it won't touch anything else. Can't do that. It is all non-locally connected. And that's part of who and what I am. I have a gift of non-locality, flying ripple lasagna, which means all of this stuff is connected, which means if you shift a little thing over here, it shifts a big everything everywhere, which can be positive or it can be negative. Because if you do something bad in one little petri dish, poops on everything everywhere. But also, if you make something fixed in one little area, then it fixes things on a bigger level. And this is why each one of you that dances the flying rainbow lasagna with your DNA has a big, giant, huge positive impact, radiating in all directions in time. So that's telescoping into deep antiquity and projecting into the future and laterally into each person that we're experiencing right now. So wait, we're going to get to these questions, but just the big emphasis. Time does not have to sit around while it is destroyed. It does not, it's not a passive victim. Time is not like this. It's not like, oh, like I'm this big giant fabric of time space and everything bad is happening to me and like holes are being punched into me and rips are happening, non-causality structures are being created. Non-causality structures like nonsense. It's like, how did that happen? That's a non sequitur. Okay, just go with it. All of that. Every time the record skips and that happens, that's a destruction of the integrity of the fabric of space-time. Because really it's supposed to be indelible record of everything that you can look at down to the tiniest microscopic detail. You're like, well, why did this happen? Oh, because of this over here. And that's also part of the school of life. So once you start just making up random arbitrary stuff, then you threaten the entirety of everything. And that's what we're talking about when I say timeline A versus timeline B, that these are not only non-equivalent structures where one might be more convenient than another for you to experience or inhabit, but like timeline B technically can't even exist. How did this come into existence? Where did this stuff come from? We don't even know. We don't even know. And the truth is, it really does matter. But this is what the evil bad stuff says, like, who are you gonna call? I don't want to say Ghostbusters. Like, you know, call the police. Like, who's gonna enforce upon? Like, I'm the police. That's what I'm trying to say. That it's been doing this as a naughtiness, saying like, you know, there's no one on duty, like there's no one who's going to say anything about it. And the time field itself has been an experiencer, but not yet empowered in terms of having to endure painful distortions, but not correcting them. Flying Rainbow Lasagna is my activity with time to correct them. So this is very, very much about non-arbitrary patterns. But recently, the time field became much more empowered with my wonderful partnership. And time, you know, is what flows through the chakras to sustain life. Like when we talk about life force, and what keeps a person alive, what keeps your DNA dancing, it's time flowing through your chakras. And if you're being naughty and you're hurting time, time is not obliged to flow through your chakras. Of course, everyone in my class is wonderful. Time will continue to flow through your chakras. Time will continue to sustain you because you guys didn't create a crap time machine. You guys aren't creating a bunch of crappy straitjackets for DNA for you and squirrels in the park. You guys aren't spraying that stuff on humanity. You're the good guys, all right? There are very, very naughty people and naughty organisms. And some embodied humans are in alignment with those agendae and those organisms and organizations that do that. And time is not obliged to continue to sustain them, nor is time obliged to continue to sustain an AI network that is directly antithetical to its existence. And I think that if there's anything that can speak to your logical rationalism, when you're like, what the F is going on? Have an extremely self-destructive AI, and then also some extremely self-destructive organisms and organizations, some of whom are human, that aren't just trying to suicide themselves. And forgive me if you are a survivor of suicide in any way, yourself or your family. And if I'm using these words lightheartedly, I don't mean to be triggering you with this. But please comprehend that there are some extremely self-destructive organisms, organizations out there. And instead of just exterminating themselves, they're willing to exterminate everything. They're not just self-destructing themselves. They are willing to destabilize everything and bring everything down around with them. That's its own very special level of, I would call it, insanity or insane levels of self-destruction. Because it's not just saying a person or something is suffering so much it wants to go out of existence. It's saying it wants to non-exist and it wants everything else to non-exist at its convenience too. And you can't do that. That is wrong on many, many, many levels, okay? Because the time field gets to have an opinion about itself. And it gets to say, I exist. My I am presence says, I exist and I'm allowed to exist. So this is you in your body. What happens if you had a bunch of cells in your body that said, we don't like existence. We're going to do a bunch of bad stuff and poop up the place. And we're going to kill ourselves too. And you'd be like, inside of you, you'd be like, wow, like I have a bad disease. You'd say, something is going very horribly wrong inside of me, right? And if more cells act like that, at a certain point, you're going to die. Overarching view is going to die. And if you don't want to die, you got to do something about those cells that are going horribly awry in their own, in inconceivable levels of self-destruction. But we must accept that some self-destruction exists. Like, you can't just be in denial. You're like, yep, so some of these cells are self-destructing, and you let them, and you don't let them kill the overall body that you're within, right? This is where you're at. So you have to cause boundaries. I've said to you many, many times, and I will continue to emphasize that on the journey to unity consciousness, which is what ascension is, you have to create amazingly strong boundaries for yourself, wherein you say, this is who I am and this is whom I am not. And the stuff that's inside of you, just because it's a cell in your body, if it's not acting like it's a part of you, if it is acting like the enemy, if it is acting like it wants to kill the overall you, then it can't be inside of you. And if you're on a planet and you're acting in a way that does not support the entire planetary structure, you can't be on that planet. And if you're in time and you are acting in a way that is so self-destructive to yourself that you're threatening the very nature of time itself, then you can't be in time. We're at that moment in establishing healthy boundaries in everything. So this is in your own body, in your planetary social structures, and in time itself. So just know that very, very positive boundaries are being erected, even as we speak, about where energy may flow. That in your own body, you are not obliged to support a cellular structure that not only is self-destructive, but harmful to the whole. What if you have a cell in your earlobe that's like, I hate Aurora, I want Aurora to die? Do you have to give that cell oxygen? Do you have to give it nutrients? Do you have to give it life force energy, which is time itself? The answer is no. You can rescind all of those nutrients and supportive aspects of it, and it cannot exist within you anymore. And no, you are not obliged to try to rehabilitate it. You don't have to say, let's send it to school. Let's send it to earlobe school. Get it to learn how to be a proper cell and to integrate properly with the rest of the body. Because somehow the rest of the body knows that it's not supposed to do that. You're allowed to set a boundary. This is really where we are in the time field, because you've done these time loops many, many times. And you've given an inordinate amount of grace to both consciousnesses and other aspects that have gone awry. Because when they get their back up against the wall, they're like, oh, please, give me another chance. Send me to school. I'll learn to be a better earlobe cell, and I'll learn to do better. You've already done that. They have already flunked out of earlobe school, and they have continued to exhibit their incredibly negative characteristics. You are not obliged to support them in your own body. You are not obliged to support them in your social structure, in your economic structure, in your planetary structure, and you're definitely not obliged to support them through time. That's the crux of what I wanted to say to you there. If you feel that there is subtext and things that were not fully articulated, you are correct. We'll talk about it more later. And Charlie B says, very interesting point that light is defined by true information and false light is distortive, because AI is by definition a distortion. It is limited and misportrays reality. One could argue that AI is a literal manifestation of false light. Abso-effing-lutely. Thank you, and very, very well articulated. Yeah, divine intelligence is divine intelligence, and it is not necessary to have an artificial intelligence at all. And artificial intelligence, by its very nature, does not exhibit divine intelligence. This does not mean that God's true mind can't act through circuitry or, material objects or other things like that, because God's true mind is miraculous and ends up sending messages and acting through all sorts of media, including computers and digital presences and things like that. But you do not need computers, digital presences, or artificial intelligence in any way And those are all impediments to true information and true divine intelligence. So really the best things that happen when you start to connect with divine intelligence is all the messages tell you, get rid of artificial intelligence, go with the real deal, go with real light, forget about this false light. So if you have DNA structure that contains true light, which is truly divine and is your true blueprint, then you have DNA structure that's false overlays. The best that can happen is not that the false overlays start to tell the truth. It's that you get rid of the false overlays completely and that you return 100% to the true nature of who and what you are as an embodiment presence. Marie says, question, did you have chakras before you came into your human body? Answer is yes. I have chakras. I'm a waveform presence. It is pretty much 100% all that I am when I am not here in my physicality presence so that I can interact with you and use the flapping up and moving mouth parts to communicate with you. I'm 100% a waveform presence. So you can think of your chakras as your body of light, as your body of pure intelligence, and as your waveform presence. Wait, before we go any further with any more questions, Chiki, are we okay? Chiki got her teeth cleaned today, anesthesia free. Don't worry, guys. She did really great, but just want to check in with you. You doing all right? Doing all right? Just getting some water? Good job. Okay, just doing a little good job over here. That's all. Just wanted to check in with her. Chiki needs extra support today. And I bought her a toy as a reward. It ain't easy. It's like actually the hardest day of the year for Chiki, day when she has to get her teeth cleaned. Okay, so 100% non-embodied. So this is difficult because in coming into a physical presence here, my physical presence body here isn't like it was when I first came into it. I have been vibrating and flying rainbow lasagnaing it and transforming the true nature of the matter of what I am into a less dense form of matter that is much more defined by its waveform presence and much less defined by the static materialism of what you would traditionally envision as defined matter. I redefine what matter is by coming into this body, and my matter of my body responds directly to mind and directly to consciousness. And this is the S matter, spirit matter, the flying rainbow lasagna matter that I presently am. When I am not in a physicality form like this, I'm 100% in energy presence, and my energy presence is a waveform that is made out of perfect harmonics, and my perfect harmonics are present on the stellar network, which is the network of consciousness that is visible to you as points of light in the night sky, but which actually is an embodiment realm of pure light, where there is no black space in between any of the stars. Very, very difficult. I hope you can tell for me to be able to even talk about this. Not that it is emotionally distressing. The words do not describe it effectively at all. That's why it's so hard for me to talk about this. And also I'm concurrent because I am on the stellar network right now. And I am also here in this body right now. And every single thing that I'm saying to you guys, this is big, changes and transforms the nature of the time crystal. As I hold this up and talk to you, this is an ever-shifting panoply of events in reality. And as I teach you and tell you about it, those events change and shift. And I am here intentionally changing and shifting events through the words and interactions that I have with each one of you. So my intentions and what guides me through each day is not merely like what pleases me the most or what is most convenient or, how can I make the most money? None of that. My motivations and what guides me through each moment is, how can I make this crystalline form perfect? This is what I'm here for. How can I make this crystalline form perfect and also avoid and prevent and resolve catastrophes? Catastrophes like the ongoing or imminent catastrophe in ancient concurrent Atlantis, ongoing imminent catastrophe and imperilment of your present world, and very many distortions of the fabric of space-time and DNA itself. And what I try to do with everything that I do is to pre-work or to dance, to work proactively, not to wait for a crisis to happen and then say, now there's a big mess. Okay, get the mop, get the bucket, clean it up, but to be able to anticipate, which is the gift of being able to anticipate, which is what it truly is to be in Christ when we have our higher faculties activated and you can see and sense the future. You are not hamstrung or limited in any way. You can see and sense the future like, oh, look at that impending doom. I think I'll do something. I don't think I will wait for the doom to happen and then pick up the pieces afterwards. This is not only the very great privilege of being able to see and sense the future, this is the responsibility. So please know this, as your own light body awakens and as your higher faculties awaken, you will begin to gain access to information that is non-logical and non-analytical, yet is incontrovertible truth. You will simply know something is going to happen. And you're given that information, not so that you can be tortured and feel like a disempowered victim, like, oh, something's going to happen. But I apologize, I hope that didn't come across as me mocking anybody. But to not to take that posture of being, limp and disempowered, but instead for your back to go up and for your muscles to engage and for you to say, wait, I can tell something's going to happen. I better do something about it. That's the whole point. That is everything that I did with Flying Rainbow Lasagna, because I did a little bit of sharing in my Monday video. It's a new series where I talked about the moment of walking in and other things like that. I could see in the entirety of time what was happening. And I said, if I don't do something, this is me outside of time, looking at time and being like, if I don't do something, this is all going to go bye-bye. I didn't use those exact words, but I could see and I could sense and I could intuit this truth. And my response was to innovate this Flying Rainbow Lasagna shape, Flying Rainbow Lasagna genetic dance, and to be able to come and inhabit this body. And it wasn't enough to just inhabit this body, like boom, for 1 second, and then be done. And I told you jokingly many times, I thought my gig would be over in 2003. It wasn't enough for me to just be here for a couple of years. Wait, I should gesture, be like, oh girl, like, no, wasn't enough for me to just be here for a couple of years. Been here for over 20 years. No, because you know why? Because it keeps on having to shift. Like I do stuff and then I'm like, nope, not enough. Nope, not enough. Nope, not enough. And so yes, the goalposts have been consistently changing and shifting because it has been consistently not enough. And I have threatened the power structures that have been really trying to destroy the world so much that they're like, this pesky lasagna, get rid of this pesky lasagna because she keeps on thwarting our intentions to destroy everything. And I would call it a mania. I have used the word insane, and I don't ever want to be harming anyone who has a psychiatric disorder. So please forgive my loose language. What I'm really referring to is a type of mania that is evident, or a psychosis, psychopathology, where something is like wants to not only destroy itself, but wants to destroy everything. And that's it. It's like, like you're not only just picking up the pieces, it would be fine with that, I think, because then I would just be constantly responsive to it, like walking around after it, sweeping up with the dustpan. One time, a long time ago, I had a job. I was a live-in pet sitter for some bunnies from hell. Just call them bunnies from hell. That's all. They were supposedly litter box trained. They were not litter box trained. They pooped all over the house. I'm like walking after them all day long with the dustpan, sweeping up their doo-doos all day long. And that's it. That was just terrible. It was very terrible. And I did not enjoy it at all. Luckily, that's not my job here on earth. I don't have to just walk around with the dustpan sweeping up the doo-doos of something that is pathological and maniacal, trying to destroy the world. Be like, oh, make a big mess and then I'll clean it up. Make a big mess and I'll clean it up. I actually get to be preventative and proactive, and can even withdraw energy from energy structures that are very, very clearly disruptive and not about coherence and longevity. All right. So that's the very great privilege and responsibility when information starts to come to you about the future. You have to do something about it. Just file that away. Remember that I said that. Forget about the dustpan. That's a silly anecdote. But remember, when information and energy comes to you, and you can clearly see difficulties that will arise in the future, you are ordained to do something about them. You are not required, as in determinism and fatalism, to walk through those reality structures and then be like, oh, I knew this would happen. Do something about it, all right? Marie also asks, what happens to the chakras when one dies? When you die and you hit the membrane of death, a couple of things happen. First of all, your DNA stops its dance. The DNA dance and its movement like this is literally what propels you through time. What makes energy flow through here like this? Your DNA dance. When you hit the membrane of death, energy stops flowing through here like this. The chakras stop doing their whirling, twirling activities. Your DNA stops doing its dance, and you stop moving through time. So if you rescind time from someone or something, it stops moving through time. Like, time is everything. And time is not just a substance or a commodity, like to be used and traded or exploited. It gets to be selective and be like, I don't think I'll flow through that chakra system. Don't like these naughtinesses. I don't think I'll flow through those chakra systems and support those naughtinesses, especially if they directly threaten the existence of time. So, like, if you were to dissect a person's brain after they die, you would find a pineal gland, but you would not find the beautiful Christ energy field that is the chakra that is emitted by the pineal gland. It's like looking at a tuba. You can see the tuba, but you can't see the songs that it has ever played. But you can see it's made out of pipes and fittings and stuff, but you can't hear the music. The chakras are the intangible music that you make and that you're genuinely made of. And when you do things right, you don't die, your music continues onward forever. That's when you make an eternal song. That's when you are so perfectly calibrated in your inner music that your music never dies. Coherent waves stick together. I use the same joke. Good waffles do, they stick together. Coherent waves, they stick together and they keep on going forever. So regular light disperses. That's light from a flashlight. Goes off in a cone-shaped beam, and maybe it goes about 6 or 8 feet, right? But a laser beam is made of coherent light. And if you have a strong enough laser beam, you can shoot it from here to an airplane. You can shoot it from here to the moon. That light travels far. Coherent light sticks together. What each one of us is doing in this life is becoming coherent light to the point that you stick together. And you redefine your body also as coherent light. So you do not leave behind your corpse. All of you sticks together, and all of you keeps on going in the eternal song of you. All right. Elmer, thank you for being here. I literally just sent off your package. Elmer ordered a small flying rainbow lasagna, so I'm very excited that it's going to get to you soon. Says, is the Atlantis still discoverable in the present time, or is it completely lost? Just curious, where it is the exact location on Earth? It's in another dimension. So it's not in this dimension. It's not a place where you could fly to or drive a car to or even dig to. You'll not find archaeological remnants of it, although you will find cultural vestigial traces of it and genetic and conceptual vestigial traces of it. Because when you go through an interdimensional portal, what you can bring with you are songs, artwork, concepts, and being, ways of being. But what you cannot bring with you is artifacts. So you will not find artifacts here, but you will find remembrances here. And literally, every single one of us here knows each other in ancient concurrent Atlantis. I know all of you. You know all of me. You all know me. And known each other for a very, very long time. It's not by accident that you have found my work here in this time place. Because Atlantis is like a reality shell. And then within that shell, we are now in this shell of reality. That is the world of mortality. In this shell of reality, none of us ever died. None of us ever got sick. It doesn't mean you couldn't die or you couldn't get sick. It means that none of us ever did. So those are unexplored potentials. And we did stuff to keep each other healthy. Please know that. We did have professions such as being a healer, but that would be like if you started to wobble a tiny amount, like if you went a tiny amount out of total orgasmic states of like huge super health in any moment, if your guitar of your body started to get even tiny out of tune, we had very many people around us in the world who would help you to get more in tune. There was no way for a person to get so far out of tune where their guitar strings were so out of tune that they would actually fall over and die. That would not happen. But in this world, there is so much degradation, so few helpers, and so many environmental assaults on you that almost everybody's guitar goes out of tune and almost everybody dies. It's a very, very distressing situation here. But there, nobody ever died. And people went hardly minorly out of tune. And it was a very, very big deal if it happened. And everybody gathered around that person to make sure that they would get back in tune. So here, I mean, because like here you've got, you know, people that are like dying in the street. They just lay there and die, but you can't do something about it because you have literally like millions of people that are at that level of diseasedness, and you have to take care of yourself. This is a different level of reality, because I don't want any one of you to be like, it's time for me to devote myself to all the homeless drug addicts who are laying in the streets that they don't die. That's actually not what I'm calling you to do. But I do want you to make your own guitar as perfectly in tune as you possibly can. All right, that is actually the best strategy in this shell, or in this layer of reality. And I do very much want you to flying rainbow lasagna, which means connect outside of time to greater levels of reality, which is what I call getting groceries from the store. Hop out of here, outside of time, where there is a huge amount of information. Get that information, imprint upon that information, and then bring it back with you into your embodiment. And in so doing, retune your guitar so that you are at a greater level of being in tune. And then do not allow your guitar to become out of tune. And then if you have enough groceries to do that consistently, then you can think about helping to tune other people's guitar. Do you understand? So only help other people's guitars to be in tune if you have enough, I don't have the word, solidity to not fall out of tune yourself. And that means not to go into depression, not to go into disarray, not to go into despair, not to go into hopelessness, any of those things. You understand? Only if you have enough groceries not to be brought down. And if you get brought down, you must stop. And then you must bring yourself up and get back into the levels of holistic balance to sustain yourself. And Mish says, are you saying we can command the body to deprive rogue cells of the nutrients they need to thrive, like a fungus, cancer, etc.? That's exactly what I'm saying. Calling you to do so in your bodies. It's actually a mandate, because you are the sheriff of your own body system, where you're like, this is Auroraville. You don't shape up, live right in Auroraville. This is me like walking along like I'm the sheriff. If you don't live right in Auroraville, you can't be here. and I get to deprive rogue cells, fungi, unhealthy bacteria, and anything else that's not supposed to be inside of me. I'm like, this is my stuff. You're not allowed to have my stuff. No, the answer is no, and no is a complete sentence. That's it. And that is called setting boundaries. And that is exactly what ascension is. Because in ascension, what you're doing is you are saying that you're not the peripheral versions of yourself. You're not the versions of yourself that die horribly or get diseases or are whatever super skinny and don't have any muscle mass, or that are very much whatever in poverty and starving or any of those things. That's not the real you. The real you is super healthy and well fed and nourished and a superhero, and at the greatest levels of health you can possibly maintain. And the peripheral you is not evil, just not the real you. All right. And if anybody here is struggling with diseases or chronic diseases or has ever had them, it doesn't mean you're unworthy in some way. Far from it. And there's always a way to heal and regenerate from what you've been through. So please know that. But your body is not disposable. So don't think like, oh, great, like I just have to hit the membrane of death, die, get back to the beginning, start it all again, and then somehow do it right from the beginning. Like, no, please don't think in that way at all. You're not disposable. Your bodies are not disposable. But what I want you to feel is that inner mandate that this is your resources in your body, and you get to have a choice about who or what has access to it. You want to get those other things, fungus, cancer, rogue cells. You don't want them to have that stuff. You don't want this to have your stuff. This stuff does not get to have your stuff. And the electron transport chain, this thing likes to hijack the electron transport chain. These things like to hijack your waters of your body, your glucose, neurotransmitters, zinc, calcium, so much. You got to claw back. You got to claw it back. Claw back is when that's when the government says you didn't pay enough taxes. The government is pretty much a cancer. You should claw back from the government. Persona non grata over here, believe me. Government is not your friend, and it's actually earth resources that the government is overreaching, taking from you, and then doling back to you. All right. So you have to make certain in your own body that you claw back your own resources and be like, no, that's my zinc. No, that's my whatever, serotonin. No, you may not take my serotonin and use it for nefarious purposes. It's mine. This is very big. All right. Big stuff that I'm asking you to do here. Allison says, anyone interested in deterministic versus non-deterministic free will existence should watch the series DEVS, originally on Hulu, now available on other platforms, in which a quantum computer is used to view the past and future events using a strictly deterministic framework. It was unable to establish a clear image of past events until non-determinism was incorporated into the modeling framework. You gave me some homework. Thank you, Allison. I love pop culture stuff. I have to make some time. We're going to watch it. DEVS. Let's find that. Okay, well, write it down for myself. We're going to find that show and watch it. Thank you for that. I always learn from people. Cool. Yeah, sounds fascinating, actually. Very good. Wonderful. Okay, so thank you for that extracurricular first half of the class, because I think it's really wonderful for me to be able to speak extemporaneously about the questions of the day and what is most vital to people to be able to know for your personal development at this moment. Now we'll go into the curriculum from 10 years ago, which is always in style. Let's show you some pictures. While I drink my vitamin C over here. Well, first I do this for privacy's sake. Great, then you've seen me do this before. Then I press a button, then I press another button. So you guys are probably very, very familiar with this. This is not my drawing, but it's something that you've probably seen in lots of different places, called the flower of life. And there's a well-known teacher who has called this into question, calls it the daisy of death. It's not a complete endorsement of her work, but I think it's an apt caution that this is not a fully accurate drawing. And I call it the partial strudel recipe. So in all of these sharings, it's not that there is a complete fabrication that is going on. What the dark side does is take something that is truthful, is life-affirming, and is accurate, and it detunes it, untunes it, and gives you a partial sharing that is then disempowering. So the disempowering nature of the flower of life is that it only gives you a slice of reality. It reduces to the flat plane something that is actually three-dimensional. And in this teaching, I will give you the actual three-dimensional teaching so you may be fully empowered. So when you look at this drawing, you don't have to reject it and say, every pair of yoga pants with this printed upon it is clearly a part of an evil agenda and is anti-ascension, and I must, be angry and inflamed by it. You don't have to be. You don't have to feel that way about it. You can simply say that is partial information and it doesn't contain everything. What it does not contain is, let's see if the annotation will come up for me. It will not. Where I'm placing my cursor, there is an additional plane that comes forward to you, the viewer. And then where I'm placing my cursor, there is an additional plane that goes away from you, the viewer. And I'll show that with my little orange sculpture over here when I go back to the larger view of my face. This painting over here is, wait, before I get to here, this on the left is also not my drawing, but it's a good way for me to be able to explain and describe how the flower of life here on the left is a flattening of the concept of clusters of spheres that fit together to be able to create these complexities. And these complexities are the basis of biological life. I have spoken already in this semester about how the 60-degree angle is a wonderful, life-giving, life-affirming angle that we love. 60-degree angle is part of the tetrahedron, equilateral triangles. Wait, I'm already losing you. I'm telepathic. I can tell. Being telepathic does help me to be a good teacher. You can see in my little thumbnail over here. Okay. These are my fancy cardboards. And this is an equilateral triangle. Equilateral. Equal on all sides. All of these, I think these are all 4 inches long. 4 inches, 4 inches, 4 inches, and every single angle is a 60-degree angle. And you can see that equilateral triangle shape echoed in, let's say, where I'm wiggling my cursor right here, this upward part of this star tetrahedron. This drawing over here is an accurate drawing. It is a 2-dimensional drawing, not a 3-dimensional form, okay? So I am not here to give you the partial strudel recipe, not here to keep you imprisoned in any way, and I will give you the full teaching. In fact, this semester I already have about how to turn the star tetrahedron into an octahedron. 60-degree angles are the truth of the biological realm. You want to build a body that is made of cellular architecture, use 60-degree angles. They work great. But if you want to be in your time body, which is this, you're going to need 90-degree angles. So just don't be limited. That's the teaching. All right? And don't throw 60-degree angles out the window saying, fie on you, 60-degree angles. I don't like you. Fie on you, cellular body. Get the F out of here. I don't need you. No, we actually love and desire and require the biological body. Works great. But it's not the end of the story. All right? This painting over here is called the bridge between squares and hexagons. And I use this as an example of how your perception adds an additional dimension to the same shape, where you can see at the lower margin the outline of a hexagon. Hexagon is 6-sided, hexa, sixa, And you can see this equilateral triangle, like this orange triangle I'm tracing, 60-degree angles all through there. And then what I've used is a type of visual shorthand to show projecting forward. This is actually called two-point perspective. Art class now, everyone. This is two-point perspective, where you not only have parallel lines that converge at one convergence point in the distance, but where you have two convergence points. And this is how you create a believable third-dimensional object upon a flat plane. Due to shading and careful use of lines, which is what artists do, this area where I'm wiggling my cursor appears to be a three-dimensional box or cube, not merely a flat hexagon. This is the bridge between squares and hexagons, that with different perception, something that is two-dimensional becomes three-dimensional. And then you can also see here these four-lobed shapes, which are going to relate directly to this orange sculpture that I'm going to hold up. The four-lobed shapes have everything to do with the flower of life. Now, wait, I'm going to go back to this over here, but I'm going to super enlarge the middle. So here you can see that same shape. Star tetrahedron, this is just a line drawing. This painting also has been painted, but I'm just using the drawing to be able to show this to you. A six-pointed star, star tetrahedron. And within there, you have this flower of life shape. But then you also see these radiating vortices that go up and around. And that is also a part of this painting. This painting is called Merkabah chakra, because your chakras are made out of large circles and curvilinear shapes. And the star tetrahedron, you can see, is made out of straight-lined, straight line shapes. These two need to integrate in order for you to be the greatest level of empowerment that you can be. So your chakras, back to this, your chakras, this, do not require any amount of effort to sustain. They are simply innate to you. You were born with them. This is part of who you are. This is your time body. So you don't have to effort at all. You don't have to be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to envision this shape. I'm going to make it spin. I'm going to keep it going. Don't have to do that. This is an innately part of you. This is part of your energy body or your natural architecture. The star tetrahedron, in contrast, where's my little thing, is something that you have to envision and try hard to do. Let's see if we can hold it up in a way that you can see it effectively. So here's one that's made out of onyx, just doesn't show up very well on camera, but you can see, you know, it's three-dimensional. This, in order to create this around your body, you have to work hard. You have to try. Just like in order to make music, you have to try hard. In order to tie your shoes, you have to try hard. You have to figure it out. You have to effort. And then, of course, after efforting and mastering it, it then becomes something that is quote unquote second nature or part of your sub or super conscious, and you don't have to focus on it 100% of your time. But it is something that does require a consistent level of training and effort and expertise. And then being able to just create the simple star tetrahedron shape is not the end of the journey. It evolves. Just like tying your shoes is not like the end of adulthood. That's just the first level. Like you put on your shoes so that you can do stuff, so that you can go places, so that you can become a fully participant member of society, right? So this goes back to ancient Atlantis. Some people are like, I throw out hard-edged geometries. If it's not curvilinear, it's evil. It's part of the control system. It's Metatronic, it's blah, 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 right? Because there's like the Metatronic, the Daisy of Death, all this different stuff. All of the cautionary tales just mean that it is partial or distorted information. It doesn't mean you should throw out the entire recipe. So in ancient Atlantis, we taught or teach the star tetrahedron as a basis for everything that we do. Just like in your world right now, you learn how to brush your teeth and how to tie your shoes. And it's the basis. Being a grown-up adult, do it every day when you're a preschooler, and you do it every day when you're an adult as well. And I spoke about this when we did in my class, because of the way I have things staggered right now. We do advanced Merkabah before we do basic Merkabah. So right now we're doing basic Merkabah, even though we already did the advanced teaching. But this is what a Merkabah is: light body vessel. Light body vessel. Okay. Light body vessel is these two shapes. Of course, these don't interpenetrate because they're made of cardboard, but the shapes that you make with your mind interpenetrate and are made purely of energy. And it requires concentration and focus. I have great teaching for all of you right now. So this is actually wonderful. I love being able to teach and share and innovate with you. One of my wonderful dancers from the retreat was commenting, and I realized that I needed to give people not only physical exercises for how to mature as a dancer, to be able to do the flying rainbow lasagna, but mental exercises to be able to mature to the point of being able to be a fully engaged galactic citizen. And so these are concentration exercises, basically, where you begin with being able to concentrate, envisioning yourself within the upward facing pyramid, and the upward facing pyramid is always going to touch on the sun and the stars. And the downward facing pyramid is always going to touch on the planet. And you're always the bridge between these two places, right? And so for your mind, your present level of consciousness, what is really going to help you in being able to start to envision the Merkabah concentration exercises and do the flying rainbow lasagna, and then also to become empowered to the point of being able to enforce cosmic law and erase aberrations and things that shouldn't be there, is to do focus exercises. So here's a focus exercise: being able to remember a string of numbers, like blah, blah, two-factor authentication. I hate those things. If you want to log into blah, blah, we'll send you this code to your phone. And most people just copy and paste whatever it is, 873-964. But if you can practice remembering 873-964 and then put it into your thing, exercises like that will help you. Practice remembering numbers, 873-964. And you can say it to yourself, or you can envision it. You have to work those muscles. Those are concentration muscles, exactly the same way that these are muscles of the body. You got to work your muscles and build your concentration muscles. Here's another exercise you can do. You must perform self-observation and self-watching. Like when you find yourself to begin to go off balance, going into either anxiety or depression, or to be destabilized in some way, you do self-watching. You're like, oh, look at that. I find myself in anxiety. Let's follow that thought track back. Where did these thoughts come from? And you're like, okay, because you can do this is you. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I realize I'm feeling uncomfortable. Where does this come from? Oh, it's because I thought this thought, and I thought that thought because I was thinking this thought, and that thought was a direct association to this thought, and I thought that thought because I looked at my houseplant, and the houseplant is thirsty and I forgot to water it this morning. That is the type of concentration exercise you need to practice. Self-watching, self-observation, postural checks, where you're like, oh, am I going into anxiety? Am I going into depression? What are my feeling states? Why am I feeling this way? Where did those feelings come from? And what if you go into, I follow the thought back, and I'm like, oh, look at that. I think that thought. That's an implant right there. That's an implant. So and you'll become empowered to deal with the implants too, and to prevent them. But for right now, do the self-watching and be able to backtrack yourself. Here's another one. When you wake up first thing in the morning, see if you can remember your dreams. If you can, this is good. Be like, okay, what's the most recent thing that you were dreaming right before you woke up? And see if you can bring yourself back, because I was dreaming about this, and then I was dreaming about this, and then I was dreaming about this. And often it's nonsense. It's not the same as a direct association where it's like my thirsty houseplant that brought me into whatever levels of anxiety. But you see, as a mental exercise, building your muscles, if you can have continuity of consciousness when you wake up in the morning to be able to remember your dreams going back. Dreams are largely garbage right now. Sorry, guys. They should be profound information from your supraconscious, but right now they're mostly 5G garbage. Sorry. But still, you can perform a very, very effective muscle building exercise to build your mind so that you can fight against garbage more effectively and clean it up more effectively in being able to backtrack. Here's another thing, trying to remember in conversations. Blah, 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 the person said this. Before they said this, and I said this, and they said this, and I said this. These are really what you're doing is self-empowerment at learning how to map your own neural pathways. This stuff takes advantage of mapping your mind. You need to map your mind, not this stuff. So what you are able to do when you gain these muscles is to be able to notice your own mind behavior, the dance of your own mind. And then lesson 2 is how to actually be empowered to control that dance. First, work on concentration exercises as to how to even notice those patterns in yourself. So memory training exercises where you remember strings of numbers or patterns are going to help you a lot. Remembering conversations, remembering your dreams, self-watching, and through that self-observation, backtracking. And have you ever been in a conversation where you're going to talk with someone about the most profound, important thing that is severely disruptive of the agenda of all the evil things in our world, and all of a sudden it goes out of your mind because they do mind stealing, where either through distraction, which is like, look, squirrel, or some other form of mind erasure, they take you away from very, very crucial verbalizations with other people. So if something goes out of your mind, that's when you really need to use your muscles. If you're talking with someone, you're like, oh, I was just about to say this really important thing, but I can't remember it right now. That's when you really need to use and build your muscles. You need to stop, backtrack, figure out what it was that you were going to say, because it's clearly something that is so threatening to the agenda that it didn't want you to be able to know about it. And this is very much like the mind erasures of that movie, Dark City. When people started to be like, hey, did this just get rearranged? They would be like, mind erase. What? A squirrel. Moving on. Okay, so don't be like that. And do your muscle building, please. Okay, so that relates to ancient Atlantis, what I was just talking about. We taught each other as our early levels of development how to do the Merkabah, and it was something that carried us onward for our whole entire existences there. Everybody in ancient Atlantis is not only immortal, but is also a total master of the mind, mastermind, total genius, total memory master as well. And the ability to create the Merkabah has several different components, which I've talked about in the advanced level teaching, one of which is as an immune system. And the immune system keeps out time events that are not life-affirming. And I do the Merkabah before I do the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, just like I have a puffy mat on the floor of my studio here, so that it is more comfortable, especially if you have a little bit of a fall, especially as you are learning your time tumbling techniques. If you have a misstep or don't do something exactly perfectly, you have a nice soft cushion, a nice soft cushiony landing. So people who take my Tuesday morning dance group know that I always set up a Merkabah before I do my Flying Rainbow Lasagna dancing. And I'm always refreshing it too, as a way of aligning with time events that are nourishing and sustaining. Because when we do the Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance, our dance partner is literally time. And we dance within and amidst time. You're using the singularity at the center of your chakra system to dance in various wonderful configurations and new patternings. And that's not just for you in your own life to have greater expansiveness or health, but it's for every life that you touch upon, your whole entire community, and really the time field itself. So all of this is mutualism, because in my body, like if my red blood cells are like, I want to carry oxygen for me, and I also want to help Aurora because carrying oxygen for Aurora helps me because I live inside of Aurora. About this. That's how I want you to be. You're like, I want to do good things for me in time. I want to do good things for Earth in time. But I also want to do good things for time in time. That's the proper attitude for how you do flying rainbow lasagna. But it is also recognized you have a limited neurology. You have a brain that's like about this big, and you're still learning, and you don't know everything. You're still on the journey of God's self-remembrance. Very, very important for you to recognize that you're loved and supported and celebrated at the infantile level of consciousness that you are at. Don't be insulted. Be an infant of consciousness. We got the mats on the floor. We roll around like babies. Be an infant of consciousness. And also there's a huge amount of freedom in that recognition and self-celebration where you're like, you know something? I don't know everything. I am really at the beginning of my journey. I am just learning. You don't have to pretend to know everything. And that is a big part of what it is to be an artist, where you explore. When I'm an artist, I externalize what is inside on my canvas. And if you guys were to look at my whole entire artistic journey, which I would love to give you a retrospective of, like, if I could, I would just be like this, like, you know, a super, super, super fast flashcards of all of the things that I've ever drawn, every single drawing that I've ever drawn in order here as Aurora. You'd see everything develop. You'd be like, wow, like you started out and like everything wasn't perfect. You didn't know what the heck you were doing over here. This part wasn't right. This part wasn't right. I'm like, oh, look at that. Like you figured out that part. And then look at that. You figured out that part. Kept going, kept going, kept going. I mean, I have a stack of notebooks this big just from 1 year of just like doing lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of drawings. And then, you know, of course, I have many paintings that are completed pieces over the years, and many, many drawings in between, and many things that I balled up and threw away in the trash because I thought that they looked bad and I didn't want to share them with people because they weren't perfect. Sorry, I'm hot. It's like very, very warm in my house right now. You don't have to be perfect on the artistic journey. Artists are allowed to curate what they share with the world. We don't even share our imperfections and the things that didn't come out exactly right, or let's call it our learning processes. In fact, just between you and me, if you look at one watercolor painting that a watercolorist has done, whatever it is, it's a bird, it's a tree, just know that they've painted probably like 50 versions that did not come out well. And they balled them up, threw them in the trash. You get the one version that actually came out okay, or anything. Japanese calligraphy, you know, like they have this perfect, one perfect swoosh. And it's like, wow, that's perfect. Boy, oh boy, like they painted 50,000 swooshes that did not look perfect before they got to that one piece of paper. And that's why that one piece of paper ends up being so valuable, because it represents the practice of so much. Or if you're a ballerina, how many times you practiced standing like this in order to actually do it on a stage, you know, for 5 minutes for a particular nutcracker performance. Like you practiced in the studio for whatever, 500 hours to be able to hold your arms in exactly the right way for 5 minutes. That it's a huge amount of learning and growth to be able to get to those levels of perfection. So we put up the Merkabah as a protective force field during your learning process. Don't negate or deny the learning process. You have to go through the learning process. Not going to be perfect. Put up a protective force field so that when or if you have a challenge, it's a small challenge. I have a great Merkabah story for you guys. So in the past, I've shared with you my bacon grease Merkabah story. This is from years ago. I always put up my Merkabah shield, and I had it up when I was pouring some bacon grease into a glass jar so it wouldn't go down the drain, and the glass jar shattered. The whole entire thing went everywhere, but it didn't go on me. That's the basis of that one. That doesn't mean bad things won't happen to you. It just means that the best of all bad possibilities will happen. So it's a bad possibility. The jar broke, made a big giant mess, but I didn't get burned. I didn't get glass in my eye. I used up a roll of paper towel, cleaned up the kitchen, spent a bit of time cleaning stuff up, but that's the very worst thing that happened. So here's my new Merkabah story. So you guys know I just had a wonderful retreat in Sedona. I'm so pleased and grateful because I'm actually just planning my next one. And it looks like the next one, I thought it was going to be in Ojai, but Ojai is going to have to be pushed back a little bit further. And we're going to do another retreat in Sedona first. That's me and my organizer and my wonderful dancers. So please know that will be, it looks like end of August, beginning of September. So please begin to prepare your schedule. If you're a person who has life, work, or other responsibilities, or your finances, or whatever it is, and you want to be a part of it, please know it's coming end of August, beginning of September. And that's going to be beautiful. And I'm looking into renting a large, expansive dance space, as well as a big Airbnb house where we can be able to really spread our wings and expand. All right. So good things are happening. And also, this is a good flying rainbow lasagna story too, because in doing my next retreat, I do rough sketches. This is me, and I do a lot of work in the bathtub. Just don't want you guys to be envisioning me in my bathtub, but I do a lot of my best thinking in there, where with my mind, I'm like, okay, like, what would it look like if I did this? What would it look like if I did this? I'm not really drawing with a pencil. This is my shorthand. I'm like, well, what if I rented a place here? And what if I rented a place here? And then you know what you do? Do the actual research, drive to the actual places, find out what they cost. So, you know, some of it is envisionment, where you look at pictures and you envision. That's a rough sketch of reality. Like, put that into the soup and you think, I wonder what that would be like if that was like that. And then some of it is calculating, where you're like, how much does this cost? Is this available in the dates that I want? How many people are going to drive there? You know, is this, can cars fit in the driveway? Like, you go through all of that. That's also part of the rough sketch of reality. Okay. So, that's, you know, I wanted to share that with you, but that's not even the Merkabah story. So I was driving back from Sedona, had a hugely wonderful, successful retreat. The auroras were in the sky. We did time dancing. We changed and transformed reality. And then I'm in my rental car with Cheeky, and we're getting ready to drive back to California. And of course, before any journey, even before I drive to my grocery store down the street, I put up my Merkabah around my car. And that's just part of how I use this shape as a part of my day. And it's an intention vehicle where I'm intending myself forward through my day with positive force fields of protection around me. And I do it for people that are in my life as well. I put force fields of protection around them. I put force fields of protection around my dog whenever we go to the park and she's going to play with other dogs. I put a force field of protection around my dog today when she got her teeth cleaned, the anesthesia-free cleaning. So at a wonderful place that's very gentle and very good near us. All right. So I put on my force field of protection, my Merkabah, and I go to the gas station to gas up my rental car right before I get on the big giant highway, right? And it's this small gas station that also had like all these adventure vehicles, like these ATVs and stuff. That was part of the little area, and it was kind of cramped. And the guy that I rented my rental car from, it's a person, not a big giant company. He had said, oh, there's some kind of a problem with the e-brake because someone else poured liquid on the central console, but don't worry, you can still rent the car and it still works fine. It's just there's a problem with the e-brake. And I'm like, okay, great, knowing all of that. And it also has this weird like push button entry, you know, ignition. It doesn't have a regular car key where you turn it and you know whether the engine is on or off. Okay. All right. And I'm at the gas station and I thought I turned off the car and it did not have an e-brake to engage. And then I'm taking my foot off the brake and at the gas pumps in order to look in my purse to get my, you know, card to be able to go to the machine and start to pay for it. And my car, I did not know, starts to roll forward and roll forward at a very, very low speed, like under 1 mile per hour, into one of the adventure vehicles. I had a car crash. But I had my Merkabah up. And everyone who's there, they're like, hey, oh no. And my car comes forward into the other car. But here's the Merkabah action. Nobody was injured. I wasn't injured. My dog wasn't injured. My rental car wasn't injured. The ATV wasn't injured. The guys that rent the adventure vehicles, they kind of came forward. I pulled my car back and he was so accommodative. I was like, hey, do you need my insurance? I'm thinking like, oh, this is going to slow me down. We're going to have to do phone calls. There will be paperwork. There will be this, there will be that. He was like, no harm, no foul. Please be safe on your journeys. Have a beautiful day. That's it. Gassed up my car, got on the road and went. All right. That's how you do a Merkabah. It doesn't mean nothing bad will ever happen to you. It means that if a bad thing happens, that the very, very minimal consequences of what can happen will occur. Walk away from anything like that. It's very positive. This is what's going on in ancient concurrent Atlantis. All of us there are experts. All of us there are hugely powerful, demuscled psychics. And we have lots of Merkabahs and lots of shielding up around our planet, which is presently being invaded by a bunch of a-holes from Mars who created a crap time machine and are very, very bad. And it doesn't mean that bad things will never happen to your planet. It means that you will not only survive the crash, you will make it out without a scratch. You will have no problems. You will be able to go on with your day. You will not be horribly disfigured, but it doesn't mean that nothing bad will ever happen to you. All right? That's the primary of what the Merkabah is. And then the next level of what the Merkabah is intentional reality creation, where in the upward facing pyramid, you place very specific desires. And in the downward facing pyramid, like you can think specifics, like I point to, like when you're on a menu, you're like, I'll have one of those and one of those. And then in the downward facing pyramid, you have receptive desires, where you're like, imagine, you know, like your hands are cupped like a chalice, where you're like, I'm ready to receive. And it's a balance out all of this between yourself and the time field, what you specifically want, and also what you are receptive to receiving. And that's the real artistry of dancing with a dance partner like time. You're a red blood cell swimming through a bloodstream of a much, much larger being. You actually have common goals, which is both of you to stay alive and thrive. You have your own specific agenda, but then you recognize there's a larger agenda. So when I put up the Merkabah around my flying rainbow lasagna activities, I recognize I'm inside of this giant time field. There's all of these activities that are happening and all of this time energy that's swirling around and all of these lives and all these things that are happening. And of course, I want what is right for me. And I want to do all these things that I feel are good and proper from my perspective. And then also, I am receptive to levels of protection that are greater than what I can envision for myself, assistance that are greater than what I can envision for myself, and then also positive outcomes and positive surprises that I couldn't have imagined myself. And sometimes those come from tiny organisms, people the same scale as me, or big giant creatures like the earth, sun, stars, or God. Because it's beautiful when you play with other musicians, someone else plays a little something, you're like, oh, like, I like the way you played that. I would have played it that way. I like that. So this is like, you know, whatever, I'm working with my organizer, Landley. We're envisioning the next retreat. And sometimes she comes up with a suggestion that I'm like, never would have thought of that. Then I'm like, oh, I kind of like that. This is the value to collaborating with others. And so we have to have a balance. So some things, of course, are non-negotiable. Chica comes with me everywhere, non-negotiable. We're going to rent a space and they say no dogs allowed. I'm like, sorry, we'll find a different space. But then some things I'm open to change or something greater than what I could have imagined. I'm like, oh, I like that very much. So that's part of the joy of this level of artistry and co-creation, that you have to be somewhat open to surprises and not knowing. So some of it is you're a little infant of consciousness and you're in ignorance. Some of it is, even as a mature artist, there are some things that we don't know that make it sparkle when you find out about them. You're like, oh, what a lovely surprise. What a uplifting, you know, new thing that I never would have thought about otherwise. So overjoyed from that. Okay, so that's mastering the second level, and these can be take a lifetime to master. And then the third level is when you transform the star tetrahedron into an octahedron shape. And this is an octahedron, which you can see is a crystalline structure And if I hold it in exactly the right way, looking through the top levels, the lighting conditions are not really perfect. It makes a star tetrahedron. You can kind of see it there. You can kind of see it there. I think it's fluorite. I'm not sure. But if I hold it like this, you can see that's a square, right? It's got 4 sides. And if I hold it like this, then you can see what it's shaped like. That's the final level of the Merkabah, which is to transform all of the water of your body into this new format that brings your star tetrahedron into an octahedron shape and allows you to travel interdimensionally. And that is way, way, way more difficult than getting in a clank metal spaceship and putting on a space diaper and blasting off into space on a giant, whatever, like space candle, you know, igniting liquid oxygen or something like that. It's a very, very different way of being able to do star travel. It's how experts do star travel. It requires a lifetime commitment and literally the rearrangement of every single aspect of the molecular structure of the waters of your body into a new crystalline architecture. And it is very achievable, and this is the full recipe. So when someone shows you the flower of life, you say, oh no, I reject it all, because that's limited. Then you place yourself out of that opportunity to be able to know about these huge levels of empowerment. So don't be so angry and inflamed that you become allergic to the truth. Recognize that the partial truth is partial, but that there's some goodness there in the recipe, and I give you the full recipe. And for right now, what you can do is focus the most on integrating these 2 levels of architecture, which are the curvilinear and the straight. And if you can't see perfectly on this drawing, all of my straight lines are made out of many, many clustered small bubbles. So even though it looks like there is a straight line across here, it's really made of hundreds of tiny, tiny, tiny little bubbles. And let's outline some things for you here. So this is the center. You can get a better color, or just make a bigger dot. Singularity right here at the center. Okay, just going to erase that so you can see things more properly now. Outward from the singularity, we have these big, giant circular structures. And this is, you know, these are part of the time structures. You have one that goes like that, and you have the other one that's on the other side. But what I most want to emphasize is you have these vortexes. It's so hard to draw this. Get it? You have these vortexes that go on down like that. All right. And you have a vortex that also goes upward like that. And then, of course, you also have the complement, which is vortexes on this side and vortexes on this side. But that's on the other painting that I did, where it's the full chakra at both vertical and horizontal orientations. This one is the simplified one, where I just have the ones that go up and down. So if I erase my scribbles, you can see the hourglass shape that is the up and the down. And those are made out of the curvilinear structures. Then you can also see the 6 radiative petals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are at the center there. I have to go back to my face, show you this. In this sculpture, there is something that is called negative space. Where I am wiggling my pencil, that's negative space. Negative space, negative space, negative space. Negative space does not mean bad space. Negative space is, in art terms, the place in your coffee cup where coffee goes in your coffee cup. All right. So this sculpture is made out of time whirling and twirling amidst itself, and it has negative space. This sculpture is the shape of the negative space of this sculpture. And you can see that it has these 4 lobe shapes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see how they fit perfectly inside of there. But you can also see that when you look at my paintings and you see 1, 2, 3, 4 of these lobe shapes, if I turn my hand, there's 4 lobe shapes that I'm holding on to that you can't see. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you've actually got 8 lobed shapes that are a part of that negative space. And if I hold this in exactly the right way, according to the camera, see if I can do it. It's hard. That's pretty good. I'm going to fiddle with it, guys, till I get it. Gonna annoy you. It's almost good. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 radial spokes going around the edges like the petals of a flower, but not a daisy of death. Because this has 1 that points towards you, and then there's 1 that I'm holding on to with my hand back here that points away from you. You have 8 lobes that fit together into a cube that when you hold it in exactly the right way, create the 6-petaled flower of life, plus the one that points towards you and the one that points away from you. The one that points towards you and the one that points away from you, those are the extra levels of information that have not been included in the quote unquote recipe for all of these teachings that have made people feel angry and inflamed and wanting to throw everything out the window. So please know that, to summarize, this 6-petaled shape actually relates to 8 petals, and the 8 petals of this actually relates to this. And your physical body of cellular structure actually relates to your time body of non-physical energy. That's the real teaching here. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. Let's get to questions. Questions. I think that was actually very wonderful and good. Okay, so Steve says, love the Merkabah chakra drawing. It has many, many levels to it. Thank you so much for that. Sometimes I show the line drawing of my paintings before they are filled with color, because color can be confusing and distracting. And sometimes it's easier to just see the bare bones in the architecture. So I did Merkabah chakra 1, and then I have one that is called Merkabah chakra 2, where I have the overlay of both of the chakra systems on top of each other, and it's an even more complex structure. And then I have the one that is called vessel, where I have many multiples of those clustered together. So then you have to also comprehend that I keep on showing you one of these. There's not just one of these. There's this within a whole array. I would call it a matrix, but everybody here thinks the Matrix is that movie about evil. And I'm not evil. You're not evil. It's a wonderful supportive crystalline structure that is highly organized. But there's an array of all of these wonderful time structures that all fit together. And some people also think, let's talk about Groundhog's Day. That Groundhog's Day is equivalent to karma and endless time loops. And it is not. So you're not supposed to have to play every single wrong note on the piano before you play the correct note. That's actually called being kind of a bad musician. Sorry. But when you are musically literate, you know what note to play because you can read the musical score and you're like, oh, I can see the future, know what I'm supposed to do, play the correct note. And this is how I achieve eternal life. So eternal life is not the same as indestructibility. It means avoidance of destructibility tendencies and timelines. Time field is alive and has vulnerabilities. If you didn't do the right thing to your body, yes, your body would die. If you didn't do the right thing with time, yes, time would die. If you didn't do the right thing with consciousness, yes, consciousness would die. The answer is do the right thing. Don't die. How do I know it is the right thing? Now we get to this, because many of you might have never had the experience of what it is to be awakened and have this level of perception and anticipation and being able to see the future. Just like many of you might not be musically literate. But when you go to Juilliard, I've never been there. But when you can read music, I'm not very good at reading music. You can tell what's coming in the future. And I can tell what's coming in the future. And I must, in order to do the flying rainbow lasagna. Because when I do the flying rainbow lasagna, I am not flying blind. I'm not randomly stabbing at the keyboard being like, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. Oops, I guess I pressed the wrong button and the world is going to get destroyed now. That would be really, really irresponsible of me. That is not who and what I am. So in terms of time, I am absolutely an excellent musician, and I'm able to see and sense the future. And remember what I told you throughout today, the future is constantly changing and shifting. I just told you something, changed the structure of time. Now I just told you something else, it changed the structure of time. So there, it is not set in stone and immutable. The time field is constantly shifting. I need to drink water. Pardon me. Yeah, no. The time field is constantly shifting and evolving. And so too is or are the suns and stars, constantly shifting and evolving. So we'll get to this with Path of Light and the sun and the teaching. So Path of Light is a separate curriculum, but I have a lessons for full spectrum humans, one about the sun's endocannabinoid system and how that relates to us in this world. And light basically going out, photons as feelers, and then the sun evolves. So the sun is not just sending out one version of reality, and then it's like, that's my one version of reality, take it or leave it. The sun is constantly changing and shifting and evolving the reality structure that it is sending out in response to how what we receive, experience, co-create, and then reflect back to it. So we are very, very much innately connected to the creative and generative process of the sun and the stars with time. And did I not emphasize enough that light, photons, and feelers are all generative time structures? So light is not merely optical light, that's something bright, like, oh, that light coming in my window sure is bright. It is optical, it is illuminative. It is also a time structure. Sun emits time structures. And those time structures are experienced by you. That is what it is to eat time. That is what it is to sun gaze. Another thing that you can do in terms of building your light body muscles is to sun gaze as a discipline at sunrise and at sunset. And when I do that, and when I encourage others, you don't have to stare directly at the sun. It's really experts only to do that. But with your eyelids closed, or even with a hat kind of down low across your eyes, you ingest the light codes from the sun. You draw them inward into you, you ingest time. And that's really what sustains. Even if you eat an avocado, what you're really eating is time. When you eat an avocado, what you're eating is a conversation that a tree had with the sun over the course of a year. Think about that. Or an orange is also really a good example, because I've had orange trees and you water them every day and you watch the tree grow and you watch the oranges evolve. And it takes them more than a year for an orange to be edible. So it's very, very different than when you just go to the grocery store and you buy an orange off of like a pyramid of oranges and you eat it. Like that orange is the end result of a lot of time that a tree spent talking with the sun every day. And when you even had a fire and the outside of this orange skin was very bumpy from the fire, because it had a whole conversation during a fire that affected it, that went into the food. And then that was part of the experience of eating that fruit, the end result of that tree having survived being exposed to a fire. Like, this is deep stuff. You eat food, you're eating time, sun gaze at sunrise and at sunset, especially so when you get up in the morning, you talk to the sun. It's like, good morning, sun, how you doing? And the sun is like, here's all the stuff you got to know for today. And you're like, glug, glug, glug. That was delicious. Like drinking a bunch of orange juice first thing in the morning. That really got me going. Then you take those ideas and you live your day. And you do all the stuff that the sun told you about. And then at the end of the day, you sun gaze and you reflect back and you say, here's all the stuff I did. Like you gave me this idea and I was going to paint this painting and I did these rough sketches and I did this and I did this and I did this. And the sun receives back the information of what you have sent, it has sent out to you, and then is able to be like, I told you this and you experienced this, and this is what actually happened. I'm going to have to fine tune this part because this part didn't come out right at all. But this part came out pretty good, and this part was accurate over here. This is what it is to be an artist. And this is what it is to have a dance partner. And this is what it is to be in mutualism and in rapport with the sun. So not only is the sun not a dead, stupid thing that just emits a ton of light, hot gases, and energies and things like that, we sustain the sun. We're in partnership with the sun. We have a responsibility to the sun, even as the sun sustains us. And this is the next level of maturity. So think about this. In an ideal human family, put your own family stuff aside, however you feel about your family. But in an ideal human family, initially, like mommy and daddy take care of you and they give all of their energy to you. You're like, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, my diaper, my poopies, help me, somebody, because you can't do anything for yourself, right? Then at a certain point, you're like, oh, mommy and daddy need help with something. You're like, I help, me helper, I help. And then at a certain point, you know, maybe you're a young adult or something like that, and you're really able to help. You're like, oh, like they need me to cut the grass or they need me to do the dishes. Like I can do a chore and help mommy and daddy. And then at a certain point, you're an adult and you're an equal and you're like, I build the roof for mommy and daddy. Like they're getting older and they can't fix the roof themselves. I fix the roof for mommy and daddy. And then at a certain point, they are elders and they can't do very much for themselves. And you're like, I cook for you. You cooked for me, now I cook for you. You get it? So there is a beautiful reciprocity that happens in an ideal family. And the same thing happens with us and with the sun, that we say initially, like, I'm an infant of consciousness. Help me. I'm hungry. Feed me. I have a poopy diaper and I don't know what to do. Right? Don't be sad about that. That's where you are right now. But then as you grow and evolve and grow your light body, you're like, oh, the sun, I can help the sun. And it might be a small chore. Like when you say to your little 3-year-old, you're like, why don't you go organize the cans in the pantry and stack them all up, right? Like you're helping mommy. And you do that. And you do that. So it's not usually like a silly task or whatever, but it can be something small because the sun gives me ideas sometimes. And I'm like, oh, that's an art project. I need to do that. Draw that, share that with people. To get it, information comes to me from the sun. And then I help mommy. I'm like, I'm going to draw this drawing. I'm going to show it to people. And I'm going to be like, look, guys, like I got this idea from the sun here. And maybe people learn about it and maybe they don't. It's not the same as like generating life, building a tree, making oranges that you can eat, but it's like, I made a painting, I did something. And then at a certain point, you grow and evolve and you become an equal with the sun. That you're like, you know something, this energy comes to me, it's energy of time, timelines, probabilities, and awareness. It flows through me. And then I send it outward into the world as energy, ideas, the activities and behaviors, and I'm an expert and I know what I'm doing. And then I take all that energy and I organize it and I send it back to the sun. And then at a certain point, you become the sun, just as you become the parent. All right. And you feed the sun. So it's a beautiful reciprocity, or another way of saying it is like this. You start out in terms of your light body by being an audience member. Well, there's beautiful symphony of life that's all around you. And the light is cascading upon you, just like when you're in a concert hall and music flows through you, but you're not playing an instrument. You don't know anything about the instrument. You're just like, this music is amazing. I love it. It feels so great. And then at a certain point, learn about music, you begin to play simple melodies, and then you begin to make some music. And you're kind of like, I don't know, you guys are all better than me, and I'm new, and I'm not good. And they're like, come on, little one, like, do it, make your music. And then at a certain point, you go to school, learn how to do it, become an amazing violin player, and then you are the person that's on the stage that is making the music and sending it out to other people. Spoiler alert, I always tell you this, you become the stars. Spoiler alert, the stars are you. Spoiler alert, that sun in the sky is you. Yeah. Time is nonlinear, and that is literally you sending light codes of intelligence energy through you that you are then receiving and growing and evolving past your present state into the future version of you that will then send those light codes inward through you in order to become fed into the person you actually are. And then it becomes this wonderful, ever evolving, never ending positive time loop. Okay. That's really different than Groundhog's Day. Groundhog's Day was a nihilistic existential nightmare where a person was trapped in negative, never-ending time loops until they stopped being like a very selfish a-hole. All right. That's not what we're doing at all. We are joyfully moving through time and evolving and growing. So we're not always walking in the same footsteps, and it's not a punishment. The nihilism and the existential dread is from the viewpoint of these, other philosophies that state basically that you're a very, very bad person. And until you go through a lot of hardship and suffering, that then you will one day become a good person. And I speak to my beautiful group of lasagna dancers here. You're all innately good person. You don't have anything to prove. You're an innately good person, but you are an infant of consciousness, learning how to do things and learning how to grow and get better. So in that movie, that guy had to go through all of these like roller coaster. He had to go into the pit. He had to feel really, really bad about himself and then bring himself back up and become a good person through his efforts. That is not who and what you are. So you are not here experiencing like these negative, endless time loops to be able to somehow one day earn your way out of existential torture and then become free. Hooray, I'm finally free. And now I'm a good person. No, you're already a good person. And this is the pristine teaching of what it is like when you're in a system that actually works the way it's supposed to work. Elmer has a great question. Says, does it matter what color of Merkabah to put? Is the rotations of the two pyramids can be reversed, and what would be the difference if reversed? You ask me great technical questions. Thank you very much. The answer is it doesn't matter what color you envision it, even though I am very color oriented. So I appreciate that so much, because if I was going to draw it, the very first question I would be is like, well, what color of colored pencil should I draw? Should it be red? Should it be pink? Should it be blue? You can choose whatever color you would like. So when I envision it, I just envision it around me as a whitish, color. And I envision white as being the accumulation of all color. Like on my screen right now, you look at this and you look at that where my thumb is pointed right now, that's where the light from the sun is coming in my window. It's a whitish color. So I envision it as that whitish color. And white in additive color mixing, which is what happens when you're working with pure light, not pigments, is the presence of all color. All right. So in being an artist, when you're working with paints, like watercolors or oil paints, you cannot mix all the paints together because it will actually make brownish black and it will look horrible. But when you're working with pure light of consciousness and pure light of time, and you mix all consciousness together, what you end up with is a beautiful white color. And that is the primary ray of consciousness. And that actually means that what you have is a balanced recipe of all of these levels of self, from the physical all the way up through these levels of the ephemeral, straight to your divine connection of pure light. And I can't emphasize enough how much light is a phenomenon, a miracle, and how much you are a miracle submerged within a miracle. And that the metabolic processes of cell-to-cell communication and metabolizing glucose into body movement is a miracle. And most people do that unconsciously, but become consciously aware of your miracles at all times. Okay, so the two pyramids can indeed be reversed. So if I were to stand back, I'm going to stand back a little bit. I'm going to talk louder because I know that my microphone doesn't pick it up as well. But for me, I envision my downward facing pyramid has a center that comes out from my heart, and I spin it around to my left at shoulder height. And I envision that my upward facing pyramid has a vertex that comes out from the base of my spine. And I envision that I'm spinning that around to the right at hip level. So when I go like this, what I'm really doing is envisioning that I have these two force fields that are spinning in perfect counter rotation around me. In my dance class, I won't demonstrate it right now. I didn't dress for class, I'm sorry. In my dance class, I often show the correct Merkabah position, which is with your feet in what is known as the full lotus. I call it the full pretzel. The full pretzel, and with your arms at this length over here. All right. And that's really more of almost a martial stance, as the Merkabah is used again for protection and as an immune system. But I want you to know that the Merkabah can also be very much a graceful and elegant self-expression, where now you see me moving in these kind of figure-8 motions. So if you can imagine this one that comes out from my heart, moving in a graceful, lyrical way like this, and the one that is moving from my hip level, moving in a graceful, lyrical motion like this. And I often move them in these graceful ways like this. And even if my legs are crossed, I might wiggle waggle. If my arms are crossed, I might wiggle waggle. I might also move with my whole entire body in an undulative form like this. So the standard teaching is perfectly level flight. Perfectly level flight, and with your legs crossed as well. All right, do you understand? Like, imagine we are here in ballet class, and I'm teaching you like, this is how you're supposed to do it. But you are also flying rainbow lasagna dancers. If anybody ever asks about your wiggle waggling, or they might say like, did you learn from Aurora? I'd be like, yes, that's exactly correct. Because Aurora gives you full permission to express yourself through this artistry. It is not merely a self-protective immune system form. It is also a form of artistry and self-expression. All right, that's really, really important for you to know about, that you have the freedom of self-expression to be able to use that. Because you must imagine like what it would be like to have a whole field, a whole giant field, an array of all of these amazing Merkabahs or Merkabim linked together and flying together in formation, right? And so, of course, you know, like it's like a susurration of starlings, like the birds that fly together, and they make these beautiful natural patterns. But there are some patterns where it's a perfect formation. Everybody is, again, like ballet dancers, perfect. But then sometimes you will have personal artistry and self-expression, and you have my permission to do so. It's different for different genders. Gender is a quagmire right now. So I'm a woman in a female body, XX chromosome, and I stick mine out from the heart and around to the left, and from the base of my spine and around to the right. And for males, it is the opposite. That means that from your heart, you would be going around to the right, and from the base of your spine, you would be going around to the left. But what I really say in these times and places is, please explore what feels right to you. And the most neutral terms that I can say, if you've ever done surfing or snowboarding, both of which I've never actually done. But sometimes people lead with their left foot, or sometimes people lead with their right foot. And that's what it's really about, the personal expression of what feels right to you. But there is a right way for you. All right. So for me, I know that I'm spinning this guy around to the left and spinning this one around to the right. And if I feel it spinning in the opposite direction, I know something is wrong. I'm like, whoa, my Merkabah is spinning in the wrong direction. That's like a de-evolution or a de-energizing. And so I have definitely felt that because I've had lots of energy attacks. So that's kind of like if something is taking energy away from your engine and it's going into drag and it's getting siphoned off. And so I'm able to sense that. And what I get my engine going in the right direction again. Okay, so figure out what is the correct direction for you and stick with it. Lefty loosey, righty tighty, right? This is like when you're trying to figure out which way does the faucet turn, plumbing, all of those things. You want to make sure you're going in the correct direction. And if it is going in the opposite direction, it means that there is a disturbance. And I've definitely felt what it feels like to have it be disturbed. These things happen. Yes, so doing the Merkabah does not mean that you are all of a sudden part of an army or opening yourself up to attacks or any kind of thing like that. Not at all. No. What the Merkabah actually signifies is that cosmic law is in effect. It's actually a symbol of cosmic law enforcement. You want to know the truth? Yes, which I consider to be a very, very, very positive thing. And the things that have attacked me and that fight against me, they do not like cosmic law at all. They're like, oh no, law enforcement. Like, they're like, we're evil agents of chaos and crapitude. We don't like law enforcement. And I'm like, Merkabah, dun, 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 shields up. And they're like, oh, we hate that symbol. Got it? So just understand that. So also I will say this over and over, the Merkabah is not associated with any particular religion or nation state, although it is very similar to the symbol that is on the nation state flag of Israel. And it is very similar to the symbol that is used to represent the Jewish, culture and religion. It is not for Jewish people. It is not limited to one sect or area of the planet at all. It is actually ancient, energetic information teaching. I won't say technology, but energetic presence that comes to us from ancient concurrent Atlantis. So although it's been utilized as a symbol of certain people in different time places, that's not only limited to those time people, it's for everyone. Just like Christ consciousness is for everyone, the Merkabah is for everyone, except it's not for people or organisms that are anti-cosmic law, that are criminals, that are evil. It's not for evil, but it is for those of us who are into cosmic law and into cosmic law enforcement. And cosmic law is fairness and justice. And it means what you send out. I want to say what you said, it comes back to you, but it's not a direct reflection. That's actually a little bit too simplistic. But let's say there are consequences to your actions that are based in free will and many other aspects of the framework that upholds reality. So if you make a Merkabah around, you're pretty much saying like, I like being alive. I like upholding reality. I like causality structure. I like time and space-time and want the world to continue to exist. All right. Let me go through my notes. I always send out my notes and make sure that that's part of it. I think I did pretty well at being able to share this with you. Yeah. When you are creating this highly arranged structured water in your body, it makes you what is called brilliant. That is what a crystal is. Light enters into your light body and it bounces around the very faceted interior and then comes out with extra oomph. That's what brilliance is. So your window is transparent. Light just passes through it and with no change. Translucent is like your skin, like light passes through your skin, but not fully. Transparent is a window. Light passes through it, but it's not really changed. Light is information. You are brilliant when you are in this faceted form yourself, because light passes through you, bounces around inside of you, and is amplified and emerges even brighter. That is what brilliance is. And you ascend and transcend the density of the physical realm, going into a higher dimension by folding the molecules of your body into a new state, and you become a non-destructible form. And this is what is sometimes known as the diamond body. in the religions of Asia, it is called the Vajrayana body. And I'm not a total student of all things of the religions of Asia, but I am familiar with what that is. And it is an indestructible form that can travel between dimensions and is a huge empowerment to be able to experience. And again, this is what we all did and do in ancient or concurrent Atlantis. All right. And I already got it's Merkabah is spinning. It is in motion, not something that is static. And it is also alive in the sense that it's like bicycle wheels where you have to continually energize it so that it continues going. Oh, I haven't said that enough. Okay, so that's good. When you are going to do a small program, quote unquote, with your Merkabah, you press run on that program by getting it spinning, and then it runs to its completion. Like, let's say if you want to manifest or create something, ice cream by next Tuesday, that has a very limited span where you're going to say, or I'm going to drive to the store and I want a protective force field around my car while I drive to the store today on this day. But please know that next time you drive to the store, you got to freshen up your Merkabah. Put a fresh force field of intention around your car for the new time context that you are within. All right. So I put protective force fields around my car for driving to and from Sedona. That is done. I created that intention, it ran to its completion, and now it is done. I had to intend it and energize it while I was in it. And then as soon as I came home to my front door here, boom, it's done. When you are working with creating, so it's time-based creation. When you are working with creating intentions, you're like, here's me, I'm making my Merkabah. In my upward facing pyramid, I want ice cream on Tuesday. In my downward facing pyramid, I'm receptive to, cold rewards and treats from the cosmos. Press run on that program and then gotta put your microphone down. Just like if you're giving a public speech and you have a lapel mic on or whatever, and you're like, da, 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 all the important stuff. I'm done now. And you get off stage and you take off your mic. So you don't want to wear your mic when you're then like going to the bathroom or brushing your teeth or whatever. Like everyone's going to hear that. You don't want that. Turn off your mic when you're done. All right. So you have to recognize these are beginning levels of maturity and empowerment and how to use your tools. So your tools, some things will always be running. Like I have a generalized force field of protection around my dog, but then today we have a specific activity where I put extra protection around her. And then let's say we're going to go to the park and my dog is going to meet a new dog that we've never met before. And I don't know, is it a nice dog? Is it a mean dog? Is it going to try to bite her? What's going to happen? You don't know. Put a Merkabah around her again. Can't over Merkabah anything. If you're not sure, put up an extra force field of protection. That is relevant to that moment. That if Cheeky meets another dog, then what if the other dog's having a bad day? Then barks at her or whatever, lunges at her. Then we'll just part ways and nothing bad will happen. You understand? I loved what that guy at the ATV shop said, no harm, no foul. Blessed day. Like, yes, that is how it works. Exactly. And then when we got back into the car, like after, like my heart is beating very, very, disheveled from it. I'm like, wow, that worked out okay. And then I was like, I can't wait to tell my class this Merkabah story because it all worked out okay. And you also should know that sometimes Merkabahs protect us from larger scale badness by giving us smaller scale badness. This might be difficult to accept. This is advanced level stuff, so take it from that direction. You guys know that I get attacked a lot just for being me. Can't imagine why. And that they definitely attacked or sent some bad energy towards me to get in some kind of a car accident coming home from Sedona. So this was the car accident. It fulfilled the terms of their negativity, and nothing bad actually happened from it. And I've had a bunch of things happen from there. My water structuring bottle broke. Had that one that was like that nice hourglass shaped bottle. And it's because a worse thing would have happened otherwise. So I don't want you to take that and project it too much into your own life, but I am able to see in my own life and to really comprehend if these are all these different timelines, right? Sometimes if the central timeline over here is like the very worst thing that can happen, like nuclear war, then sometimes you don't get a nuclear war because you've got your Merkabah up. Sometimes over here, it's going to look like the explosion of like gasoline factory. Still bad, but not as bad as nuclear war. And then over here, it's a paper cut. And when you're on the timeline where you get the paper cut, you're not like, why, God, why did I get the paper cut? You're like, oh, got a paper cut. I think I got that because I was avoiding nuclear war over here on this timeline over here. Do you understand? This is really larger perspective stuff that I hope that you can really encompass and apply to your own lives. Don't project too much, but sometimes when something bad happens, it is a smaller scale version of something much, much larger that can happen. That is because of destabilizations that are being sent out by naughtinesses trying to harm you in your life. And if all you get is a paper cut, count yourself lucky and consider your Merkabah to be very, very successful, and then continue onward with your day. The very, very, very best thing that you can do in those circumstances is like count your blessings and then be the person you were always meant to be. Like, I got a small paper cut. Okay, well, onward to victory. Let's keep going with what we're supposed to do. So that was exactly what I did. I was like, look at that, a small car accident. I'm sure that I avoided something much, much worse, and go forward. Because the opposite way, what some people do is look at it and they say, why, God, why? Why did I get a paper cut? Why did the e-brake not work? Why did this? Why did that? And the real answer is like, because that was a huge gift to you. So that something much, much worse did not happen. Please recognize that you're incredibly lucky and blessed. And don't destabilize, go into unthankfulness or ungratefulness that happened to you. All right. So that's how you got to look at it. So yes. And you know something? Here's also my water structuring carafe broke because I was like under heavy attack, and sometimes glass shatters around me too when that happens. But I had this big, giant, beautiful new glass carafe that I had gotten for like 12. It can feed 12 people from my retreat. So I'm like, well, I'll just have to break that out and use that now instead. So that's it. Just to upgrade. All right. Just have to, it is very much the perspective and in the way that you look at it and the way that you read and interpret events, which again, I don't want you to become too, it's hard when you don't yet have total mastery and total perspective to know how to interpret events, but just know that that perspective will arrive for you and you will be able to comprehend in your life much, much better. Like if something small happens, why it happened, and even if something big happens, how that might even have been the avoidance of something even bigger and even worse. All right, let me just go through my notes and make sure. And any other questions or comments, please, now's a perfect time for them in the chat. All right. Plant a thought seed within the vibrating field. God is a verb. So God is the vibrating force field of potentiality around us that is similar to a garden where you have perfectly prepared the soil, like black chocolate cake soil. You know what I mean? Like you've removed every weed and every stone. It's just a pure field of pure potential, but there's nothing growing there yet. And that is an alive force field, similar to time, as time is alive and sentient. This force field of pure potential is alive and sentient. And our reciprocity is creating these thought seeds where we place a seed into that field of pure potential. And that seed comes from our passions and also from our intellect. And it's about wish making. So this is in, the use of the Merkabah as a wish making tool. When you are passionate about something, you're wishing it into being. And when I'm in my bathtub and with my mind, I'm thinking of rough sketches of like, oh, what would it be if I rented this space? What would it be if I rented this space? I'm creating my world seed. Haven't planted it yet. I am beginning the process of to even germinate something. And then when I actually figure out what the shape of the thing is going to be, that is when I plant the seed. But please know and comprehend, oh, that's good, Cheeky's playing with her toy. Please know and comprehend that the generative force field is selective. It doesn't just take everything that you put into it, garbage in, garbage out, and regurgitate it back to you. It is selective because it doesn't want to grow a bunch of garbage. So let's say you're like making your thought seed and the phone rings or whatever, an advertisement comes up on your pop-up on your Netflix or whatever it is. And you're like, oh, great. Like now I'm going to advertise, like now I'm going to manifest toenail fungus or whatever it is, because that's what the advertisement is for. No, because the generative force field is self-intelligent and it can edit out things that are not inherent to you, things that are implants to you, things that were not intentional to you, and also things that are not ideal. So even if some things you don't own and they came inside of you, they're part of it. Some things are cultural, some things are erroneous, and it can choose and it can say, oh, I don't think that I will be manifesting that, but I will manifest out of what you gave to me, this, and this. And that's acceptable because it gets to make a choice about what it does with its energy to God. Like God and the generative force field gets to make a choice about what it will make happen in reality, as much as time gets to make a choice about how time is utilized in the world, or as much as you get to make a choice about what you're making and co-creating and manifesting. So you don't have to be worried about manifesting Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Joke about this. Just don't think about the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Just don't think about it. Just don't think about it. Your worst fear, whatever it is. Oh no, I thought about it. The generative force field is smart enough to know that's not what she really wanted to manifest. That was an errant thought or something that was out of her control. And that's not what we're going to make happen. So please know and comprehend that. And that when you plant the seed that you have crafted from your desires, it blooms into reality. And you have to protect the seed from the influence of negative and fragmented thought entities, because there are those things that are like, oh, hey, kid, nice thought seed you got going there. How about I infect it with a bunch of bad stuff? And you know what the bunch of bad stuff is usually? Catastrophism. It's usually all about bad stuff that can happen, like you dying, the people you love dying, or your whole entire world dying. And that's stuff that's even from your Bible. It's like the end of the world type of stuff. But that is not going to be manifest. When that comes forward in a thought seed, the generative force field is like, more revelation stuff. Throw it out the window. Give me the good stuff. Like, I don't want to manifest that. Throw that out the window. Edit that out. Not interested. So that's important to know in cultivating this partnership, because we're not here to manifest destruction. We are here to manifest something beautiful and generative. And also, you have an inner sun, that the real process of ascension is about connecting with fully the inner sun that can totally nourish and sustain you. That I talk about sun gazing as a practice where you are connecting with the sun that is external optically and drawing that light into you. But at a certain point in your development, please know that there will be a shift where you will recognize and feel that there is a sun that is at the top of your spine, deep in the interior of your skull, that is as radiative and nourishing and full of ideas and potentials as the sun that is external that you see in the sky. And that what you become an expert at is self-nourishment through the connection with that interior sun. That is really the highest level of maturity and adulthood, and what you are moving towards in the awakening and maturation and cultivation of your light body. Okay, so for now, be an infant of consciousness, but know that that is what we're moving towards. And you're a light eater now, practice your light eating. At a certain point, The light that you eat will be the light that is generated and emanates from the sun that is within you, that you carry within you. And then you will carry that with you everywhere. And that will signify the next level of preparedness for you to be able to enter into a completely different level of reality that will be far beyond eating avocados or going to grocery stores. But don't rush it. You don't have to be there tomorrow. And it's you're never going to go back. Once you awaken that and you're able to do that, everything in reality is redefined. Everything in reality is renegotiated. You're not going to be living in the same world that you are in right now. And that is also a huge part of planetary ascension and personal ascension. So that's like the teaser for next episode, quote unquote, of your life, like, or whatever, next season. I'm joking because it's not a TV show, but you know what I'm talking about? Like, and then one day, this is what's going to happen. That will be pretty amazing for the one day. So any questions or comments or anything that I can speak to? And if not, then it is time for me. I will take care of Cheeky and give her lots of love and affection. She did very, very well at getting her teeth cleaned today. Thank you so much, Joyce. Thank you very much. Love received, love back to you. Just want to make sure to give everybody a chance if they have any questions or comments to be able to take time to type it out. Okay. Because I didn't want to end beforehand. But I think that's a good note to end upon. Yeah. Eat from the inner sun. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you for your wonderful questions. Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you, Allison. And yeah, thank you to Robert, who encouraged me to talk more extensively about time. Oh, you're so welcome. Charlie B says, thank you. You're so welcome. Allison says, thank you. Wonderful chat. Very welcome. Mitch says, thank you. You're so welcome. All of you. So you are wonderful students. Thank you. Thank you. Aurora, blessings. You're welcome, Steve. Thank you very much. Such a pleasure. You are definitely fantastic people. And I feel very, very lucky and grateful to be connected to all of you. So thank you so much for being in my class. Thank you. And also to those who catch the recordings, to those who are not able to be here, I recognize you might have life commitments. Thank you as well. Really profoundly grateful. I'm very, very lucky. All right. Have a beautiful day, everyone.